is this working?
Hello, welcome to Alone in the Labyrinth, the podcast brought to you by the blog of the same name. I am Sofinho, and in today's inaugural broadcast, I want to bring you 5 recent posts from across the OSR blogosphere that have caught my eye. Yes, it is Monday, and yet I am bringing you today's 5 on Friday, which henceforth shall be both an audio experience as well as one which can be read online at aloneinthelabyrinth.blogspot.com. So, first up this week is Goblin Punch with a post on birds. I'm sorry for the emphasis of the previous utterance. Goblin Punch. That's right. It's a bit weird otherwise. Goblin Punch. Sounds like something you drink. Readers of my blog will already be aware of my embarrassing fanboy stanning for the blog's writer, Arnold Kemp. He's had something of a 2-month hiatus and returns here with a post about birds. There's an old post on the same site entitled Taming the Mouse, where Arnold first presented his bestiary, the Book of Mice. And that bestiary, as the post that accompanies it explains, is inspired by medieval ideas about how the world around them functions, such as the notion of spontaneous generation. So, in the post, Arnold mentions that medieval people were fully aware that mice could have babies. They saw the evidence when they found baby mice, or snuffed out a mouse nest somewhere behind their medieval skirting boards. If they had skirting boards, I don't know, probably not. But at the same time, whilst they were aware of that form of reproduction, they also believed that mice could spontaneously generate from the muddy banks of rivers during the warmer weather of April. It was a theory that was based upon the empirical evidence as they saw it, that in April, suddenly, mice appeared out of nowhere. Similar theories abounded with the appearance of maggots in rotting flesh, or weevils in flour. They appeared to materialise rather than being placed there. This idea of spontaneous generation has potential application in fantasy settings, as it gives mundane creatures more fantastical backgrounds, which was the basis of the Book of Mice. Anyway, where am I going with this? I think that this post is a continuation of this concept. Although I've not been able to identify the provenance of the mythology that it expounds, in fact it may be entirely original, I don't know. There's definitely the feel of medieval or pre-medieval cosmology coming into play in the way that birds are understood. And Andrew? There is no Andrew. Arnold! Utilises that beautifully and gives you something which you can drop into play. I was also reminded of Jack Vance a little bit in the section about, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a section about a village where the inhabitants disguise themselves as fledgling birds with masks, so that these giant birds will feed them regurgitated fish, and consequently the whole village never wants for nutrition, and this makes them, well, to outsiders, makes them appear lazy. And there's something like, I can completely imagine like Kugel, which rhymes with Google, if you are interested, Kugel in the Dying Earth saga, happening on a community like that, and probably causing absolute havoc. But yeah, it's totally a thing you could drop into your campaign world when your party start wandering off into the wilderness. So yeah, have a look. That's at Goblin Punch. It's the latest post, dated January the 31st, and is titled Birds. So one of the reasons I decided to do this recording is that I needed to have a break from writing, and I thought it would actually be easier to speak directly into a microphone. But after several efforts, I found that I'm not as agile vocally, or able to improvise as comprehensively as I previously thought. There is no backspace key in recording, or rather there is, but it's much more tedious for someone like me. So I kind of started to write out what I was going to say, then read it back, which defeated the object. So this may be the first and last broadcast that you hear. Next, I am going to bring your attention to the half Minotaur farmer, aka John Irwin, whom I'm not sure if I first happened upon him on Twitter or on the Questing Beast Discord. He's kind of familiar to me from the former, but a little more active on the latter. But yeah, he's certainly one of the people who has eased my transition to that platform. That's probably a poor choice of words, but I think that Twitter is a very weird environment to inhabit if you're not accustomed to it. It's very noisy, kind of a consequence of that. You're not able to make your voice heard very easily because of the noise, I guess. So it was nice to meet someone online who was very supportive, at the same time as being a good content provider. I hate this terminology, in their own right. Anyway, his blog, Half Minotaur Farmer, regularly has some good stuff there. I encourage you to have a look at it. This post, which I've selected, the most recent one, is concerned with an ongoing project of his, which is sort of rehabilitating 4th edition D&D. This is something which I've noticed a number of people are tackling this year, so I think we're going to see a couple of like retro clones emerge. And if you hear that and you're an OSR aficionado, you might balk at the application of the term retro clone to refer to something which isn't retro, but actually it kind of is now. We're coming up for a good decade. Nearly, is it? Yeah, probably. I don't have facts in front of me, but it's a long time since that edition was published, and there's talk of a 6th edition, which would make it 2 editions old. So there you go. It's also seen as something, well, I think like 3.5 edition D&D and then 4th edition together kind of galvanized the creation of the OSR as a reaction to those 2 projects. Anyway, I'm rambling now. The point is that this post is about using hit points as a resource for powers in a 4th edition adaptation. I don't play, or haven't ever played any 4th edition, but I am familiar with kind of familiar with the way that powers operate. You have like daily powers, encounter powers, like at will powers, and also you have bags and bags and bags of hit points. And John here kind of utilizes that as a resource which is expended in order to utilize powers. I think most old school games are very much about marshalling or managing your resources, of which the most precious is, of course, HP. So I think any mechanic which contributes to that phenomenon is worth looking at. Like, I personally quite enjoy HP for magic. Actually, I do it as hit dice, but both Marquis or Marquis, that's Marquis Hartis, and Pandatheist of Bonebox Chant have come up with hit point based magic systems. I think Pandatheist might be actually just another reimagining of Marquis's work, but yeah, check out John's post and see what you think. So I've included the latest post from Skirples over at Coins and Scrolls in this week's 5 for 2 reasons. Number one, he has compiled a bestiary from based upon the work of Lucas Roussel, who I'm not familiar with, so it's the first time I came across it, but something called World of Rust, which I think is a fully fledged RPG, albeit one that's in French. And Skirples has put together a list of his monsters together with Lucas's illustrations, come up with some encounter tables and a glog style table, and it's free for you to download from his website. Very generous with his resources and his knowledge is Mr. Skirples, and we're all very grateful for him for being that way. The artwork, as some commenter pointed out, is very reminiscent of Mobius, which is possibly why Skirples suggests that you can drop this into Ultraviolet Grasslands, which is by another Luca. Is it Rejek? I'm familiar. You see these names in writing, and they're from all over the world. And when you're a bone-headed moron like me, you find yourself clumsily stumbling your way through. So apologies there. The second thing I included this post was because of the advice which Skirples dishes out, again for free, and we are very grateful for your generosity, concerning world builders and artists and illustrators who produce beautiful landscapes, characters, technology, vehicles, without any kind of contextual framework. They just make worlds, which is incredible and great, but a lot of the time they don't give themselves a framework for that, any kind of real world context, by which I mean like a game or a novel or graphic novel or something like that. Instead it just kind of floats around, receiving upvotes and perhaps a few orders for prints, but you know, and what Skirples suggests is that would-be designers, RPG designers that is, and writers approach these artists and say, hey, do you want to work together on making this into a tabletop game? Which, as Skirples points out, can only at worst be met with a no response, which could be a no in response or no response at all. The best possible outcome is a possibility that they say yes, and you end up collaborating with someone and making the greatest game ever. So yeah, consider that. Okay, and number 4 is Signs in the Wilderness. This blog, I think I came across it in the world building sub on Reddit rather than an RPG sub, but the author is creating a kind of 1700s fantasy setting, and there was a beautiful post which I shared a long while back about something like shining lights in the wilderness, like where you, it's a list, basically it's a series of tables enabling you to create like a colony of religious exiles. It's really well constructed, and as with every well constructed table, delivered a multitude of fascinating combinations. Anyway, here this isn't strictly gameable content, but something that I think anyone engaged in any old school or even just standard dungeoneering style play should consider, because here the author reviews a first-hand account of the Cortez's conquest of Central America, and what the site author looks at here is the parallels between the behaviour of the conquistadors, reprehensible colonialists that they were, with your standard adventuring party who goes out into the wilderness, encounters a foreign culture, decimates it, steals its treasure, and then goes back to their home city and is showered in praise and glory. So yeah, it's about colonialism in ttrpgs, kind of obliquely, and something that I think we should all be considering, especially as I read a post, I think it was on Twitter, about Tomb of Annihilation and a colonial analysis of that. Why did Wizards decide to Now, I'm not familiar with the Forgotten Realms setting, but Chult, as I understand it, is kind of an ersatz Africa to the whatever the Forgotten Realms is equivalent of Europe is, and it's immediately expected that parties do not come from Chult. PCs do not originate here, and this is a land of forgotten civilization and culture, which is chasing the past rather than immersing itself in its present, and the fact that they're being exploited by mainland power is kind of overlooked. So parallels there with real world history, yes, but does this necessarily make for fun, interesting, or play free of moral baggage? Maybe not. Something to consider at your table, especially if you're building and setting from the start. Anyway, final post is Talon's RPG Corner. Talon, a month or so ago, posted up a list of all the RPG Kickstarters that were currently operating for the month of December, I think. And I hadn't seen him post before, so I commented to say, wow, that's a thorough undertaking. And they said, yep, I do it every month. And then I said, well, good luck in February when ZineQuest starts, because there will be like 100,000 billion. And this was a little while ago, and then a couple of days I received a notification that the aforementioned Talon had replied to say, hey, I've done it. Well, it's actually, 2 days ago. And they've posted all of the ZineQuest projects which are currently up on Kickstarter, including ones that haven't launched yet but have like a pre-launch page. It's a wonderful piece. If you have infinite time, go there and look at every single one. If you don't have infinite time, I don't know what to suggest. Look at as many as you can. Well, definitely have a look at Willow by Shane Walsh. Full disclosure, I have backed it. It just is beautiful. The illustration is beautiful. Sort of it's described as a micro setting, and there are resources galore. Very graphic heavy, but lots of tables, and it is designed for use directly at the table. It's kind of a deep green monochrome print. It looks chef's kiss, if you couldn't hear that. Mwah! There's stuff by Questing Beast up there as well, a new adventure. I think it's called Willoughby Hall. There's also 4 adventures being published by Soul Muppet Publishing, which I think, while they're ostensibly designed for the Best Left Buried game system, are definitely fully adaptable to other systems. And they've got 4 like top authors on board, including RPG SEA, Southeast Asia's ZX, who I just think is one of the most interesting RPG designers out there at the moment. I mean, I don't have the name of the illustrator with whom he works at the tip of my tongue right now, but oh man, between them they produce beautiful stuff. I think this one is actually teaming up with a regular Best Left Buried guy. The artwork for that particular piece is very much in the Best Left Buried style, but ZX writing is phenomenal. So, and the 3 others I'm sure are very good as well. So anyway, there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff for you to take a look at. So yeah, follow that. All the links for today's Far From Friday are provided on my blog. It's probably taking you a lot longer to listen to than it would for you to read it. That's Alone in the Labyrinth, all one word, .blogspot.com. Yeah, I'm going to try this again. I'm not sure if this format is really suitable for me, but it's nice to kind of talk to myself in my weird attic garret as I look out across the vista of my new home. Back once again in the British Isles, which weirdly, pretty much within weeks of me landing, have ostracised themselves from the rest of Europe. Far from for the past 6 years, Vietnam has been my home really, and unfortunately my wife and son are still there for the next few months, and we're going to be apart. So maybe I will use this platform as a way by which to communicate with you guys. That sounds sinister and weird, doesn't it? But yeah, it might assist with the loneliness. Alright, thanks for listening. I'll probably play some horrible music now. Bye bye.
It's a long way to go to be told the things that you